Time is a lie. Not the kind of lie someone tells to deceive you directly. Not a mistake written in a textbook that will be corrected in the next edition. This is something far quieter. Something that has settled into the foundation of how you see reality itself. From the moment you were old enough to understand the world, you were taught a simple story. Time moves forward. The past is behind you, gone forever. The future is ahead of you, waiting to be shaped. And the present, this exact moment, is the only thing that truly exists. It feels obvious. It feels undeniable. You remember yesterday. You anticipate tomorrow. You feel yourself moving through today. Every second seems to confirm the same thing. Time is flowing, carrying you along with it like a current you cannot resist. But what if that feeling is not evidence? What if it's an illusion so convincing that you've never had a reason to question it? Because the truth is, that entire story, the flowing river of time, the disappearing past, the open future, is not something you discovered on your own. It was given to you. Reinforced by teachers, repeated in documentaries, embedded in language itself. We say things like time is running out, time moves fast, we're moving forward. Every phrase assumes motion. Every sentence quietly programs the same belief. That time is something that flows. But physics, the deepest, most precise description of reality we have, does not actually require that idea at all. In fact, the more closely scientists have examined the structure of the universe, the less room there seems to be for time as we experience it. At first, this doesn't seem like a problem. After all, time feels real. You can measure it. Clocks tick. Seconds pass. Systems evolve. Things clearly change. So the assumption has always been simple. Time must be the thing causing change. But that assumption is exactly where the problem begins. Because when physicists started writing down the fundamental laws that govern reality equations meant to describe everything from particles to galaxies, they noticed something strange. The equations worked perfectly well without needing time to flow at all. They described relationships, structures, and states, but not a universal ticking clock pushing everything forward. And yet, instead of confronting that implication directly, the scientific community largely did what humans always do when faced with something uncomfortable. They adapted the math to preserve the story. They kept time in the narrative because removing it would mean dismantling one of the most deeply held intuitions we have about existence. Think about what it would mean to truly accept that time doesn't flow. It would mean the past is not gone. It would mean the future is not open. It would mean that your life is not something that is unfolding, but something that already exists in full. Every memory you have, every moment you think you've lost, every possibility you imagine, ahead of you, all of it would have to be reinterpreted, not as movement, but as structure. Not as a journey, but as something more like a landscape. And suddenly the question becomes unavoidable. If time isn't flowing, why does it feel like it is? Why do you experience a clear direction from past to future? Why do you feel like you're moving, choosing, becoming? These are not small questions. They cut directly into the nature of consciousness itself. Because if the flow of time is not fundamental to the universe, then it must be coming from somewhere else, from you. From the way your brain processes information, from memory stacking on top of memory, from the constant comparison between what was, what is, and what might be. In other words, the sensation of time passing may not be a property of reality, it may be a property of perception. And that realization changes everything. Because it means the most familiar experience, you have the feeling of time slipping through your fingers, might not be telling you something about the universe. It might be telling you something about how limited your view of it really is. That doesn't make the experience less real. It just means it isn't what you thought it was. And once you start to see that, even slightly, the comfortable story begins to crack. The idea of time as a flowing river starts to feel less like a fact and more like a story we've agreed to believe. A useful story. A necessary story, maybe, but a story nonetheless. And the deeper you look into physics, the clearer it becomes. Reality may not be moving at all. It starts with one of the most ambitious goals in all of physics: to unify the two greatest theories ever created. On one side, you have general relativity, the masterpiece of Albert Einstein, which describes gravity, space, and the large-scale structure of the universe. On the other side, you have quantum mechanics, a framework that governs the smallest building blocks of reality, particles, fields, and probabilities. Both theories work. Both have been tested to extraordinary precision, and yet they do not fit together. For decades, physicists have tried to merge them into a single, coherent description of everything a theory of quantum gravity. Something that could explain the universe from the smallest scales to the largest without contradiction. In the 1960s, two physicists, John Wheeler and Bryce DeWitt, took a major step in that direction. They attempted to write down an equation that would describe the entire universe at once, not just a part of it, not just particles or fields, everything. The result was the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. At first glance, this equation looked like a breakthrough. It treated the universe as a whole quantum system, described by a single wave function. It was bold, elegant, and incredibly powerful. But then came the shock. When physicists examined the equation closely, they noticed something deeply unsettling. Time was nowhere to be found, not hidden, not implicit, completely absent. There was no variable representing time, no parameter ticking forward, no distinction between past and future. The equation didn't describe how the universe evolves over time. It described a universe that simply is. Mathematically, it takes a form where the Hamiltonian operator acting on the wave function equals 0. In simple terms, it says nothing changes, no evolution, no motion, no unfolding story, just a static, timeless reality. This wasn't a minor detail. This wasn't something you could ignore or patch over easily. Time is supposed to be fundamental. It's supposed to be the stage on which everything happens. And yet here was an equation, arguably one of the most important ever written, that didn't need time at all. Physicists called this the problem of time, but notice the framing, not the discovery of timeless reality, a problem. Because accepting what the equation was saying would mean abandoning one of the most basic assumptions about existence, that time flows. So instead of declaring a radical shift in understanding, the field took a different path. They tried to fix it over the next several decades. Countless approaches were proposed to reintroduce time into the picture. Some suggested that time could emerge from more fundamental, timeless laws appearing only at larger scales, like temperature emerges from microscopic motion. Others introduced internal clocks, physical systems within the universe that could act as reference points, creating the illusion of time passing. There were models using scalar fields, reference fluids, semi-classical approximations, each one attempting to recover the familiar experience of time from an equation that fundamentally did not include it. And to be clear, these are not trivial ideas. They are mathematically sophisticated, carefully constructed, and still actively researched today. But beneath all of them lies an uncomfortable truth. They are workarounds. They are attempts to restore something that the core equation never required in the first place. It's like finding a map of a city that contains every street, every building, every detail, except for any indication that movement exists, and then trying to add arrows afterward to explain how people travel through it. The deeper question remains untouched. What if the arrows were nev? Are there to begin with? What if motion, what we interpret as change over time, is not fundamental but emergent? Or even more radically, what if it's not real in the way we think it is? Because the Wheeler-DeWitt equation doesn't just challenge our understanding of physics, it challenges our intuition. Everything in your experience tells you that time is real. You feel it passing. You watch things change. You remember the past and anticipate the future. But the most fundamental attempt to describe the universe mathematically does not reflect that experience. It contradicts it. And that puts physicists in a difficult position. Do you trust the equations refined through logic, tested through observation, and built to describe reality at its deepest level? Or do you trust your intuition, the immediate, undeniable sense that time is flowing? For most of the field, the answer has been to try and reconcile the two, to find a way for time to exist, even if only as an approximation, even if only as an emergent phenomenon. But there is a growing recognition, quiet and often unspoken, that the equation might be telling us something more direct, something more uncomfortable, that time, as we experience it, may not be a fundamental feature of the universe at all. And if that's true, then the implications are hard to overstate. because removing time doesn't just change physics, it changes everything. While most of the physics community tried to repair the absence of time, one physicist chose a completely different path. Julian Barbour looked at the same equations and, instead of asking how to put time back in, he asked a far more uncomfortable question. What if time was never there to begin with? This wasn't a small adjustment. It wasn't a technical reinterpretation. It was a complete reversal of perspective. In his book, The End of Time, Barbour argued that the flow of time, the sense that moments are moving, that the present is advancing, is not a property of the universe itself. It's a property of how we experience it. According to Barbour, reality is not a sequence. It's not a timeline stretching from past to future. It doesn't progress or unfold. Instead, reality is made up of an infinite collection of complete self-contained configurations. Think of each configuration as a perfectly detailed snapshot of the entire universe. Not just an image, but a T. Odal states every particle, every field, every neuron in every brain, frozen in a single, timeless arrangement. Each one is static. Each one is complete. Each one exists equally. Barbour gave this collection a name, Platonia. In this view, the universe is not a story being told. It's a vast landscape of nows. Not one present moment moving forward, but countless moments all existing at once. And your life? Your life is not a film playing through these moments. It's more like a path, a sequence your mind constructs as it relates one configuration to another. But here's the crucial point. The configurations themselves are not connected by time. They don't cause each other. They don't evolve into one another. They simply exist. Right now, there is a configuration where you are reading this sentence. There is another where you woke up this morning. Another where you are years older. Another where your life has already ended. None of these moments are ahead or behind. None are being created or destroyed. They are all equally real. They always have been. That idea is difficult to hold on to because it directly contradicts everything you feel. You feel like you are moving from one moment next to the next. You feel like your past is gone and your future hasn't happened yet. But Barbour would say that feeling comes from something very specific, memory. Some configurations in Platonia contain record structures that encode information about other configurations. Your brain, in its current state, contains memories of what you call the past. It contains patterns that give the illusion of continuity. So when you experience now, you're not actually moving through time. You're in a configuration that contains evidence memories, records, traces that make it look like you came from somewhere. In other words, the past is not something you pass through. It's something encoded in the present. And the future. The future is not something that will be created. It's simply other configurations that also exist but do not contain records of this moment. This flips the entire structure of reality. Cause and effect, as we understand it, begins to dissolve. Instead of events producing other events, you have patterns across configurations relationships that give the appearance of causality. It's not that one moment leads to another. It's that some moments are arranged in ways that suggest, sequence. That suggestion is what your mind interprets as time. And once you see that, even briefly, something unsettling begins to happen. The idea of becoming starts to break down. Because if every version of you already exists, every choice, every outcome, every possible variation, then what does it mean to say you are becoming something? What does it mean to change? Barbour's answer is blunt. You are not becoming anything. You already are across countless configurations. The version of you that succeeded exists. The version that failed exists. The version that made a different choice exists. All of them are equally real, equally fixed, equally part of Platonia. And the you that feels like it's choosing, deciding, moving forward, that's a feature of a particular configuration, a state of consciousness that contains the illusion of progression. This is where many people instinctively resist the idea, because it seems to strip away something essential. If all moments exist equally, what happens to free will? What happens to meaning? What happens to the sense that your actions matter? Barbour doesn't deny that these experiences feel real, but he suggests they don't come from time itself. They come from the structure of certain configurations, especially those complex enough to contain awareness, memory, and anticipation. In other words, meaning is not lost. it's relocated. It exists within the patterns of these timeless states, not in a flowing timeline. You don't act to change the future. You are part of a configuration where that action is already embedded. And that realization can feel overwhelming because it removes the familiar sense of movement, the idea that you are heading somewhere, becoming something, shaping what comes next. Instead, it replaces it with something far stranger, a universe where everything simply is. No beginning, no end, no flow. Just an infinite, silent structure of moments, each one complete, each one real, each one containing a version of you that feels exactly as you do now, convinced that time is carrying them forward. Long before modern debates about timeless physics reached their current intensity, Albert Einstein had already pointed towards something deeply unsettling, not in a public lecture, not in a formal paper, but in a personal letter. In 1955, shortly before his death, Einstein wrote to the family of his close friend, Jean-Michel Besso. Besso had just passed away, and Einstein was offering comfort. But what he wrote was not conventional consolation. It was something far more profound and far more disturbing if taken literally. He said that for those who believe in physics, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. This wasn't poetry. It wasn't metaphor. It was a direct consequence of relativity. Because if you take Einstein's theory seriously, really seriously, it leads you to a picture of reality known as the block universe. In this view, the universe is not something that unfolds moment by moment. It is a complete four-dimensional structure. 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time, all fused together into a single unchanging entity. Nothing is coming into existence. Nothing is passing away. Everything simply exists. Imagine reality not as a flowing river, but as a solid object like a vast, intricate sculpture. Every event that has ever happened and every event that will ever happen is carved into this structure. Your birth is in it. This moment is in it. Your death is in it. All equally real. All equally fixed. From this perspective, Tive, which you call now, is not special. It's just one location in the block no more privileged than any other. And the feeling that time is moving, that's not something happening to the universe. It's something happening inside you. Relativity forces this idea in a very precise way. Different observers moving at different speeds or experiencing different gravitational fields do not agree on what events are happening at the same time. What is now for one observer may be in the past or future for another. This is called the relativity of simultaneity, and it has a powerful implication. There is no universal present moment, no single slice of reality that everyone can agree is happening now. And if there is no universal present, then the idea that the universe is evolving through a shared now begins to collapse. Instead, all moments must exist together because different observers access different parts of the timeline as they're present. The block universe is the simplest way to make sense of that. It says, stop thinking of time as something that flows. Think of it as something that is just like space. You don't say that space flows from left to right. You don't think of low. Cations as being created or destroyed. They're just there. The block universe treats time the same way. Moments don't come and go. They exist as coordinates, and your consciousness are located at one of those coordinates with a brain that contains memories of other coordinates. That's what creates the sense of a past. You also have expectations, predictions, imagined outcomes. That's what creates the sense of a future. But the underlying structure itself does not move. It does not update. It does not change. It is complete. Now take that seriously for a moment. If the future already exists in the block, then it is not something you will create. It is something that is already there. Every decision you think you are about to make, every choice, every hesitation, every outcome is already embedded in the structure. This is where the idea begins to collide directly with your sense of free will. Because free will depends on openness. It depends on the idea that the future is not yet determined, that it can branch, that it can be shaped. But in the block universe, there are no branches. There is only the path. A fixed path stretching across the structure of space-time and your experience. NCE of choosing, it's part of that path. It's not creating the future, it's one of the events that already exists within it. This doesn't mean your choices don't happen. They do. But they don't change anything in the sense you're used to. They are part of the unchanging geometry of reality. That realization is why many physicists become cautious when discussing these ideas outside academic settings. Because once you fully internalize the block universe, it's hard to go back to the ordinary way of thinking. The idea that the past is gone stops making sense. The idea that the future is open becomes questionable. Even the meaning of now begins to feel unstable. And yet, despite how strange it sounds, this is not a fringe interpretation. It emerges naturally from the mathematics of relativity. It is taught, discussed, and debated in serious physics circles. But rarely is it presented in its full philosophical weight, because the implications are not just scientific, they are existential. They force you to reconsider what it means to live a life, what it means to make a decision, what it means for something to happen, and perhaps most unsettling of all, they force you to consider. The possibility that your entire life from beginning to end is not something you are moving through, but something that already exists, fully formed, within a structure you cannot see, cannot touch, and cannot escape. If you follow this idea all the way to its edge through the equations, through the philosophy, through the quiet conclusions physicists rarely say out loud, you arrive somewhere deeply uncomfortable, because this is no longer just about time. It's about what it means to exist at all. If the block universe is real, if every moment already exists, if nothing is truly unfolding, then the universe is not a process. It's a finished structure, not a story being written, but a story already complete. Every moment of your life, every breath you've taken, every word you've spoken, every decision you believe you're making right now is already part of that structure. Nothing is being added. Nothing is being removed. It's all there. And that leads to a question that is almost impossible to ignore. If everything already exists, then what exactly is happening? What is this feeling you have right now that something is moving forward, that you are progressing through it? Me? Because it certainly doesn't feel like you're frozen. It doesn't feel like your life is a static object. It feels alive, dynamic, unfolding. You feel like you're choosing, reacting, becoming. But in a timeless universe, that feeling cannot come from time itself. So it must come from something else. Most physicists, when pushed on this, point toward consciousness. They suggest that what you experience as the flow of time is actually the result of how your brain processes information. Your mind doesn't access the entire block at once. It only has access to one configuration, a single slice of reality. And within that slice, your brain contains records of memories of what you interpret as the past and projections of expectations of what you call the future. Those two things, memory and anticipation, create a direction, a sense of movement. But it's not movement through time. It's a structure of information giving the appearance of movement. In other words, the flow of time may be something your mind constructs, not something the universe provides. And if that's true, then the you that feels like it's traveling from past to future is not actually moving anywhere. It is a perspective, a localized viewpoint within a fixed structure. That realization can feel disorienting, almost like the ground shifting beneath your feet, because it challenges one of the most fundamental assumptions you have, that your actions are shaping what comes next. In a timeless framework, what comes next already exists. The conversation you'll have tomorrow, the mistake you'll make next year, the final moment of your life. All of it is already there, just as real as the moment you're experiencing right now. And that raises another question, one that cuts even deeper. If your future is already fixed, what happens to free will? At first glance, it seems to disappear. Because free will depends on the idea that multiple futures are possible, that your choices determine which one becomes real. But if all moments already exist, then there is no becoming real. There is only being real. Your choices don't create a path. They are the path. They are part of the structure itself. The feeling of deciding, of weighing options, of choosing between alternatives is still there. It's part of your experience. But it may not be doing what you think it's doing. It may not be changing anything. It may simply be one of the many events already embedded in the geometry of reality. This is where the idea becomes genuinely unsettling, because it doesn't just challenge physics, it challenges meaning. If nothing can be changed, then what does it mean to act? If every outcome already exists, what does it mean to hope? If every version of your life is already fixed, what does it mean to try? These are not questions with easy answers, and that's exactly why they're often avoided. Even within physics, these implications are rarely emphasized. The equations are discussed. The models are debated. But the existential weight of what they might imply is usually left in the background, because fully confronting it changes how you see everything. It forces you to rethink not just time, but identity, purpose, and reality itself. And yet there is another way to look at it, a quieter, less obvious interpretation. If every moment exists, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every experience you've ever had, every moment of joy, every connection, every second you wish you could go back to is still there. Not as a memory, but as a real part of the structure, untouched, unchanged, eternal. The people you've lost are not gone in the absolute sense. They still exist within the block and the moments you shared with them, in the points in space-time where those interactions are permanently written. From that perspective, the idea isn't just terrifying. It's strangely comforting. It suggests that reality doesn't erase anything. It preserves everything. But even that comfort comes with a cost, because it means nothing can be altered. Nothing can be undone. The structure is fixed, complete, unchanging. And your awareness, your sense of being here, now, are simply one point within it, experiencing a single perspective of something infinitely larger. So the next time you feel time passing, the next time you feel like you're moving forward, leaving the past behind and heading into an open future, pause for a moment and consider the possibility that nothing is moving at all, that the feeling of motion is something being generated inside you, that your entire life, every moment of it exists all at once, like a vast, silent sculpture, and you are not traveling through it. You are part of it, exactly where you have always been. N.